It started with the sprinklers. That's the thing I keep coming back to. Not the strange man, not the fear, not even what happened to Chloe. It was the goddamn sprinklers. Celebration, Florida. It sounds like a joke, and in a way, it is. It's a town built by the Walt Disney Company, a picture-perfect slice of suburban utopia plopped down in the swamp. I moved there for a job, a fresh start after a messy breakup. My new place was a tidy two-bedroom bungalow on Cattail Lane. Every lawn was immaculate, every picket fence pristine, every neighbor disarmingly friendly. It felt like living on a movie set, and for the first few weeks I loved it. Then I met Chloe. She lived 3 houses down, a graphic designer who worked from home. The first time I saw her, she was wrestling with a wilting fiddle leaf fig on her front porch. She was wearing tiny denim shorts and a white tank top, damp with sweat and clinging to her in a way that made it hard to look anywhere else. Her hair was the color of dark honey, pulled up in a messy bun with stray strands sticking to her neck. I offered to help her get the plant inside, and she flashed me a smile that was all straight, white teeth and genuine warmth. "You're a lifesaver," she said, her voice a little husky. "I'm Chloe." "Mark," I said, my hands brushing against hers as I took the heavy ceramic pot. That was the beginning. We fell into an easy rhythm. I'd go over for a beer after work, or she'd come by to borrow sugar she didn't really need. There was a simmering tension between us, a constant, low-grade current of attraction. I'd find myself staring at the way her lower lip curved when she laughed, or the delicate line of her collarbone above her tank top strap. Sometimes, when she was sitting on my couch, she'd tuck her legs up underneath her, and the hem of her shorts would ride up, exposing the smooth, tan skin of her inner thigh. I'd have to force my eyes away, a hot flush of guilt and desire prickling under my skin. I wanted her badly, but something about the sterile perfection of celebration made it feel like a transgression. Lust felt messy here, out of place. The first oddity was the irrigation. Celebration has this automated system, a network of hidden sprinkler heads that pop up from the ground to water every single lawn. It's synchronized, efficient, and utterly relentless. And it happens every night at 3 to 07 a.m. Not 3:05, not 3 to 10.3 to 07. On the dot. The first time it woke me, I thought it was rain. A steady, rhythmic shhhhhhhhh sound. But when I stumbled to the window, the sky was clear, the stars sharp and cold. I looked out at my lawn and saw the graceful arcs of water catching the moonlight. It was beautiful, in a way, and then I saw the man. He was standing on the sidewalk directly across the street, perfectly still, just outside the circle of light from a street lamp. He was tall and gaunt, wearing a dark, long-sleeved shirt and trousers. Despite the humid Florida night, he wasn't looking at my house, or at any house. He was just standing there, his face tilted up slightly as if watching the water patterns in the air. A shiver went down my spine. It was 3:07 in the morning. Who stands and watches sprinklers? I watched him for a full minute, my heart thumping a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. He didn't move a muscle. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the sprinklers stopped. The silence that followed was profound. And in that silence, the man slowly lowered his head. I couldn't see his features clearly in the dark, but I felt his gaze sweep across my window. He turned and walked away, his footsteps making no sound on the damp pavement. I stood there for a long time, my forehead pressed against the cool glass, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. The next morning, I mentioned it to Chloe over coffee on her porch. The sun was warm and she was wearing a thin floral print sundress. The fabric was loose, but when she leaned forward to pick up her mug, it draped itself against her body, outlining the gentle swell of her breasts. I had to swallow hard and look away, focusing on a perfectly manicured hydrangea bush. "A guy watching the sprinklers?" she said, taking a sip. "That's weird. Old Mr. Hennessy maybe? He has dementia, sometimes wanders." "This wasn't an old man," I said. "He was. I don't know. He just felt wrong." She shrugged, a delicate movement that made the strap of her dress slip down her shoulder. "Celebration is full of weirdos who like things just so. Maybe he's the sprinkler inspector." She grinned, and the moment of unease passed, replaced by the simple, pleasant ache of wanting her. But he came back, the next night, 3:07 a.m. The sprinklers hissed to life and I was already at the window. And there he was in the same spot. Same posture, head tilted up. This time I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach that I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to open the camera app. The screen flickered, a burst of digital static corrupting the image before it cleared. I raised the phone, zooming in on his figure. The image was grainy in the low light, but I could see him more clearly. His hair was dark and lank, his face pale and strangely elongated. And then in the phone screen, I saw his head slowly turn, that he wasn't looking at the sprinklers anymore, that he was looking directly at my window, at me. His eyes were two dark pits, devoid of reflection. I dropped the phone. It clattered on the hardwood floor. When I looked back out the window, he was gone. The sprinklers continued their methodical dance. That I told myself it was a coincidence, a trick of the light, my mind playing games. But the next day the community newsletter was in my mailbox. A small, boxed obituary. Eleanor Gable, 78, passed peacefully in her sleep. The time of death was listed as approximately 3:00 a.m. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was probably nothing. Old people die in their sleep all the time. I didn't tell Chloe about the man the second time, or about the obituary. I didn't want to seem paranoid. Instead, I invited her over for dinner, a clumsy attempt at normalcy. I cooked pasta. We drank a bottle of red wine. She wore a tight black top and jeans that hugged the curve of her hips. Every time she moved, I was hyper-aware of her, the way her lips looked, stained dark from the wine, the way she'd push her hair back from her face, exposing the delicate shell of her ear. The scent of her perfume, something clean and citrusy, filled my small kitchen. We were on the couch, the remains of dinner on the coffee table. The wine had made me bold or stupid. My leg was pressed against hers. I could feel the warmth of her skin through the denim. "This town is so quiet at night," she murmured, leaning her head back against the couch cushion. "It's almost eerie." "The sprinklers are the worst," I said, my voice a little thick. "They wake me up every night." "You get used to them," she said, turning her head to look at me. Her eyes were heavy-lidded. "It's like a lullaby after a while." She was so close that I could see the faint pulse at the base of her throat. My gaze dropped to the neckline of her top, to the shadowed space between her breasts. I wanted to put my mouth there. The desire was a physical pressure in my chest, sharp and urgent. It should have been a perfect moment, but it was tainted. The image of the gaunt man, standing silently in the dark, flashed in my mind, the two feelings, lust and dread, twisted together, inseparable. I leaned in. She didn't pull away. Her lips were soft, and she tasted of wine and mint. Her hand came up to my cheek, her touch cool. For a few minutes, the world narrowed to the feel of her, the smell of her, the small hungry sound she made in the back of her throat. My hand slid from her waist to the small of her back, pulling her closer. I was lost in it. And then my phone buzzed on the table. Not a call. A notification. We broke apart, breathless. I glanced at the screen. It was a photo notification from my cloud storage. Asterisk memory from 1 year ago today. Asterisk, but the photo wasn't from a year ago. It was a picture of my living room, taken from the hallway. It was dark, lit only by the flickering blue light of the television. And on the couch, barely visible in the gloom, were two figures. Me, asleep. And standing over me, looking down at my sleeping form, was the gaunt man. My blood ran cold. I snatched the phone up. The photo was dated last night. "What is it?" Chloe asked, her voice concerned. Her lips were still swollen from kissing. "Nothing," I said, my voice too sharp. I forced a smile. "Just a work email, sorry." The mood was broken. The dread had won. I walked her home a little while later, the chaste kiss at her door feeling hollow and forced. I lay awake until 3:07, staring at the ceiling. When the sprinklers started, I didn't go to the window. I couldn't bear to look. The next week was a slow descent into a quiet kind of madness. The man was there every night. 3:07. Standing, watching. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in the dark, waiting for the hiss of the sprinklers. My body tensed. I started researching. I looked up the Celebration irrigation system. It was a marvel of engineering, controlled by a central computer, impossibly precise. I looked up obituaries in the local paper. In the 4 weeks I'd been waking up at 3:07 a.m., 3 people had died in their sleep in Celebration. All around 3:00 a.m. Mrs. Gable. A man named Carl Jimenez. A woman named Sarah Lee. The pattern was there, a terrifying logic. The sprinklers watered the lawns at 3:07. Someone in town died at 3:00. It was a correlation that made no sense, a superstition given form by pipes and timers and well-manicured grass. And the man, he was the witness. Or maybe he was something else. My obsession started to bleed into my days. I was exhausted, jumpy. I'd see flickers of movement at the edge of my vision. A dark shape ducking behind a tree, a figure reflected in a store window that was gone when I turned. I started taking pictures of the street at random times, a frantic attempt to catch him. Most of the photos were normal, but a few had anomalies. In one, a blur of a dark shape in the background behind a perfectly trimmed hedge. In another, a face pale and distorted, peering from the second-story window of a house I knew was vacant. I showed the worst one to Chloe. It was a photo I'd taken of her, laughing on my front steps. The sun was in her hair and she looked breathtaking. But in the background, just over her shoulder, standing deep in the shade of a live oak tree, was the man. He was perfectly in focus, his dark eyes fixed not on the camera, but on the back of Chloe's neck. Her smile vanished when she saw it. "Mark, what the hell is this?" "I told you," I said, my voice trembling. "I told you about him." "This isn't funny," she said, pushing the phone back at me. Her hand was shaking. "Did you Photoshop this? Is this some kind of sick joke?" "No. Chloe, I would never. Look at the metadata. It's real." She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. The sight of her fear, the way it made her seem smaller, more vulnerable, should have stirred my protective instincts. Instead, a dark, unwelcome part of me noted how her chest rose and fell with her quickened breath, how her nipples were hard against the thin fabric of her t-shirt. The contrast was sickening. My fear for her was tangled up with a raw, primal attraction made more intense by the danger. "I think you should go," she said, not looking at me. "Chloe, please. Just go, Mark." I was being pushed away, and the isolation made the fear swell, filling the empty spaces in my house. In my head. 2 nights later, the confrontation happened. I couldn't take it anymore. The sleeplessness, the paranoia, the feeling of being watched. At 3:06 a.m., I was standing on my front lawn, a heavy Maglite flashlight in my hand. The air was thick and humid. The neighborhood was attuned. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. 3:07. The sprinklers erupted all around me, a synchronized chorus of hissing. I was instantly drenched, cold water plastering my t-shirt to my skin. And there he was, across the street. He was already there, as if he'd materialized from the shadows. He didn't startle at my presence. His head was tilted up, as always. "Hey!" I yelled, my voice cracking. The sound was swallowed by the water. He slowly lowered his head. His eyes met mine. Up close, he was even more unsettling. His skin had a waxy, pallid quality, like a corpse. His features were sharp and angular, but his expression was utterly blank. There was no curiosity, no malice, no life. "Who are you?" I shouted, stepping forward, the water from my own sprinklers soaking my shoes. He didn't answer. He just stared. And then he took a step off the sidewalk onto the street. Then another. He was walking towards me. His movements were fluid, but wrong, like a film played at a slightly slowed-down frame rate. There was no sound from his footsteps, not even a splash on the wet asphalt. Panic seized me. I backed up, the Maglite feeling useless and small in my hand. "Stay away from me." He kept coming, his dark eyes locked on mine. He was 10 feet away. 5. The scent of him hit me. A dry, dusty smell, like old books and cold soil. I could see the individual threads in his dark clothing, the unnatural smoothness of his skin. He stopped an arm's length away. The sprinklers continued to arc around us, enclosing us in a cage of water and sound. He raised a pale, long-fingered hand, not towards me, but towards the spray of water from my sprinkler. He held his palm open, letting the water patter against it. He watched it for a moment, then slowly closed his fingers as if catching the water. He brought his closed fist to his chest. Then he looked past me at my house. His eyes scanned the front of it, the dark windows, the closed door. It was a surveyor's gaze, assessing, cataloging. "This is my house," I whispered, the defiance gone from my voice, replaced by pure, undiluted terror. His eyes slid back to me for the first time. His blank expression shifted, not into a smile, but into something else. A look of recognition, and then he spoke. His voice was a dry rustle, the sound of dead leaves scraping across pavement. Not for long. He turned and walked away back across the street, fading into the shadows between two houses, the sprinklers shut off. The silence was absolute that I stood there, dripping and shaking, for what felt like an hour. Not for long. The words echoed in my head. Was it a threat? A prediction? I ran inside, locked the door, and called Chloe. It went straight to voicemail. I called again and again. Nothing. I was about to run to her house, consequences be damned, when my phone buzzed. A news alert. Fatal house fire on Azalea Drive in Celebration. Azalea Drive. That was my street. My heart stopped. I fumbled with the phone, pulling up the details. It wasn't my house. It was Mr. Hennessy's, the old man with dementia. The one Chloe had joked was the sprinkler watcher. The fire had started just after 3:00 a.m. He hadn't made it out. I sank to the floor, my back against the front door. The obituary would be in the paper tomorrow. Time of death, approximately 3:00 a.m. The sprinklers had watered his lawn at 3:07. The pattern held. The next day, I was a ghost. I called in sick to work. I avoided Chloe. I sat in my living room, the curtains drawn, jumping at every sound. The man's words were a worm in my brain. Not for long. Was I next? Was my time almost up? The rational part of my mind had been completely eroded. This was real. The sprinklers, the deaths, the man. It was all connected. That evening, there was a knock on my door. I peered through the peephole. It was Chloe. She looked tired, her face drawn. She was wearing a simple gray sweatshirt and yoga pants. But even in her distress, I couldn't help but notice the way the soft fabric clung to her legs, the shape of her calves as she shifted her weight. I opened the door. "Mark," she said, her voice soft. "I'm sorry about yesterday. I was scared. I heard about Mr. Hennessy, and I got worried about you." She stepped inside and I locked the door behind her. The familiar scent of her perfume was a small comfort. "I saw him last night, Chloe."